Before we start with the story, you're going to need to do a couple things. You can pause it anytime you want, or also remember all of these things will be available on Sunday. All right, attached to the email there is a crown template. You can cut it out, color it, and if it's not big enough, you can add however much you need on the back. The second thing you need to do is make a scepter, and that's also on the attached email. And you can, I didn't use the handle here, I just used a pencil, so that's a possibility. And the third thing is you need to make a gagger, and a gagger is a noise maker. So if you have an old paper towel tube or toilet paper tube, you cover the end with aluminum foil or wax paper or something like that, and then you get rice or popcorn or beans or something like that, and you put it inside, and then you cover the other end, okay? And again, attached to the email is a picture that you can glue on to the gagger, the noise maker, and then you'll be ready for the story. There is also a on the email on the attachments a template for some masks, and they look like this when they're done, or you can also you can just print them on paper. You can come get them from church, and then I put these on cardboard, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so that's to get ready. A lot of work here. Okay, so this is a story about a girl named Hadassah, which means myrtle. Now, we don't have any myrtle here in Siloam Springs, but we do have crepe myrtle, so that's what her name means. Well, Hadassah lived in Persia, and because she lived there, she had a Persian name as well, which was Esther. And Esther was an orphan. That means her parents died when she was young, and her older cousin raised her. His name was Mordecai. All right, and this is Mordecai. All right, so Mordecai raised her, and they were just simple people in the city of Susa in Persia, far, far away from their original home, which was Jerusalem or Judah, and they became known as Jews because they were from Judah. And they had lived there many generations. Maybe her grandparents or great-grandparents had come. So they lived in this foreign place, and they were Jews there. And there's a king in the city, and this king one day got very angry with his wife, and he kicked her out the door. And he decided to have a beauty pageant to find the most beautiful girl in Susa. So he called them all to his palace, and they had to, for 1 year, get ready for this beauty pageant. Ooh, it was a lot of work. You didn't know being beautiful could take that much work. So for a whole year, they put on perfumes and special baths and special perfumes. And on and on and on and on they went. Well, finally, the big day came. The king met Esther for the first time, and he made her the queen. Dun, 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 dun. Well, now we have little Hadassah from the village in Susa. Now she's the Queen Esther. Well, her cousin Mordecai, the one that had raised her, still kept a close eye on Esther and made sure she was okay and checked on her. Mordecai was an official in the government, and he actually even saved the king's life once by stopping a plot or a plan to kill the king. Well, one day, there was another man who was very important in the government, and his name was Haman. Now, when you hear the name Haman, you need to take your noisemaker and shake it every time you hear the name Haman, okay? So let's practice that again. There was a man in the kingdom named Haman who was very proud and very arrogant, and he had a rule that every time you passed, you had to bow to him. This is Haman's rule. Well, Mordecai, when he saw Haman, he said, "No, I am not bowing to you." And Haman was very, very angry about this. So he decided to take revenge. He went to the king and he asked the king to kill all of a certain kind of bad people, but he didn't tell the king who they were. And the king said, "Sure, go ahead, do what you want." So the order came out, but guess who was supposed to be killed? It was going to be all of Mordecai's people, the Jews. Mordecai was so sad. He cried and he wept. And finally he told Esther, he said, "Esther, you've got to hear about this terrible, terrible law. They're going to kill all of our people. You have to go and talk to the king." And Esther said, "No way, I can't do that. You know what's going to happen to me? If the king sees me without inviting me, he'll kill me." And Mordecai said, "Esther, you're going to die anyway if this happens. You have to go tell the king, and maybe you were born for this time, for such a time as this. Maybe that's why you're the queen." So Esther decided to go see the king. But first, she asked that all the Jews in Susa, and she and her maids, all fasted and prayed for 3 days. They fasted and prayed and fasted and prayed. Finally, the big day came. Queen Esther entered the king's throne room in a brand new, beautiful robe. What was going to happen? Were they going to get the swords out? Or was the king going to give the scepter to Queen Esther and allow her to come in? That's what happened. She was allowed to come into the throne room, and the king said to her, "What do you want, Queen Esther?" And she asked,
"Come to a banquet, and then another one."
Wow, so it wasn't just for the king, it was also for Haman. But that night, so they went to this banquet, they had a wonderful time, and that night, the king could not sleep. What do you do when you can't sleep? Well, he had someone read some records to him, and he found out that Mordecai had saved his life, but no one had rewarded him. So the next day, he said to Haman, who was plotting to kill Mordecai, "Hey, how should I reward someone who I really, really want to honor?" And Haman said, "Well, put a robe on him and all of that good stuff." And the king said, "Do that to Mordecai." So Haman had to honor Mordecai, and Haman was so angry that he had to honor Mordecai. Well, the time came for the next banquet. And by the way, this is a Persian shirt and a Persian jacket, so I think I'll just keep that on. The time came for the next banquet, and the king was there, and Haman was there, and Queen Esther was there, and the king said, "Esther, what's wrong? What is it? What do you want?"
"Someone is killing my people."
"Who would do such a thing?"
"He is."
"Oh, Haman? Haman's gonna kill your people? Wow, forget him." Well, Haman was killed. That left Queen Esther and Mordecai and the king to try to change the law, but they couldn't. They weren't allowed to change the law. So Mordecai and Esther made a new law that said that the Jews could defend themselves on this terrible day. So all because of the beautiful and brave Queen Esther, the people of Israel, or the Jews, were saved on that, in this amazing story where she had to be so brave and she had to be so strong and go see the king. So that's the story of Esther. Thank you, Queen Esther. So that is our story for today. We are not the only ones who tell this story. Jews also tell this story. They tell it in the form of a celebration called Purim, which is also talked about in the Bible. And that's why we have the masks, because the tradition for Jews today, nowadays, is to have masks and costumes to act out the story. So that's what I'd like you to do, is act out the story, get costumes out, have some fun with it, and get some props out and add things to it and tell the story. That's what they do on their celebration. They also make noisemakers for their celebration, and they also have a snack called Haman Tashen. I'm sure I said that wrong. And all you have to do for this is get some dough, and you just cut it into a circle shape, put a little jelly in it, or you can also use chocolate or poppy seeds. And what you do is you fold it over one side, two sides, and three sides, okay? And then you bake it. And I'm not showing you a baked one because my baked ones didn't turn out so well. This is representing, coming back, the three-cornered hat of Haman. So traditionally, Haman had a hat that looked like this. And so for Purim, when they're celebrating, they have a three-cornered hat little tart. So you bake that, and you can have that. For those of you who are coming on Sunday, we're not going to be baking, but I will have a special treat for you guys. Our memory verse is from Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Over and over in the book of Esther, we see how God prepared the way and how he planned for all this to happen. And so you can write the memory verse on the scepter. I had a little hard time. It's a little bit small. So that's a way that you can do the memory verse. The game, we're not going to act it out right now. We kind of did when we did the story, but the game is to get a dress-up bag, a bag of dress-up clothes, and see which family member can do it fastest. Because again, traditionally Jews celebrate by wearing costumes and dressing up for Purim. So one last thing before I say goodbye. This story comes after some of the Jews went back to Jerusalem, but not all. You see, Ezra and Nehemiah, that we talked about the last couple weeks, they had not gone back to Jerusalem, which means Esther saved their lives. Because of Esther's brave act, she affected the whole all the things that happened next, preparing the way for people to return to Jerusalem and for the Messiah, Jesus Christ, to come. So that's the story of Esther. I hope you have a wonderful week. Goodbye.